I stood in front of my daughter's house, my heart racing with anticipation and a mix of emotions. It had been 8 years since we last spoke, and I had no idea what to expect. As I walked up to the door, I couldn't help but think about the past and how things had escalated to this point. I thought about the fights we had, the arguments, and the eventual silence that followed. I thought about how I had tried to reach out to her multiple times, but she had ignored me. I thought about how I had given up, feeling defeated and helpless. But then, something changed. I received a call from an unknown number, and on the other end was a debt collector. He told me that my daughter was in $85,000 debt and that she had been ignoring their calls. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she get herself into this situation? I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and disappointment. But most of all, I felt a sense of responsibility. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit back and watch her life spiral out of control. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I packed my bags and booked a flight to her city. As I arrived at her house, I felt a sense of trepidation. What would I find? Would she even let me in? I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. I waited for what felt like an eternity before I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. The door opened, and there she was, standing in front of me with a mix of emotions on her face. "Dad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" I looked at her, and for a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be. I saw the spark in her eyes, the smile on her face, and the laughter that used to fill the room. But then, I saw the woman she had become, the woman with the weight of the world on her shoulders, the woman who was struggling to make ends meet, and the woman who was drowning in debt. I took a deep breath and said, "I'm here to help you, kiddo. I'm here to get you out of this mess." She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could fix this. Maybe, just maybe, we could start anew. But then, her expression changed. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice became cold. "I don't need your help, Dad," she said. "I can handle this on my own." I felt a pang of disappointment, but I knew I couldn't give up. I knew I had to keep trying. So, I took a deep breath and said, "Okay, kiddo. But just hear me out. Let me tell you what I have in mind." She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, she would listen. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way out of this mess together. She raised an eyebrow, and I could see the skepticism written all over her face. But she didn't shut the door on me, and that was a start. "What do you have in mind?" she asked, her voice still cold, but with a hint of curiosity. I took a deep breath and launched into my proposal. "I know you're in a tough spot, kiddo. I know you're struggling to make ends meet, and the debt collectors are breathing down your neck. But I also know that you're a smart girl, and you're capable of getting out of this mess. What I'm proposing is that we work together to come up with a plan to pay off your debt. I'll help you with the money, but you have to agree to let me help you with the rest of it too." She raised an eyebrow, and I could see the wariness in her eyes. "What do you mean by, the rest of it?" she asked. "I mean that we need to get to the bottom of why you're in this situation in the first place," I said. "We need to figure out what went wrong, and how we can fix it. We need to talk about your spending habits, your job, your relationships, everything. And then, we need to come up with a plan to change things, to make sure you're not in this situation again in the future." She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. But then, her expression hardened, and she shook her head. "No way, Dad," she said. "I don't need you poking around in my business. I can handle this on my own." I felt a pang of disappointment, but I knew I couldn't give up. I knew I had to keep pushing, to keep trying to get through to her. "Kiddo, please," I said. "Just listen to me. I'm not trying to control you or tell you what to do. I'm just trying to help you. And I know I can help you, if you'll just let me." She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of doubt in her eyes. But then, she shook her head again, and her expression hardened. "No, Dad," she said. "I mean it. I don't want your help. And I don't want you poking around in my business. Just leave me alone, okay?" I felt a surge of frustration, but I knew I had to keep calm. I knew I had to keep trying to reason with her. "Kiddo, please," I said. "Just think about it, okay? Just think about what I'm offering. I'm not trying to hurt you or control you. I'm just trying to help you. And I know I can help you, if you'll just let me." She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of uncertainty in her eyes. But then, she shook her head again, and her expression hardened. "No, Dad," she said. "I've made up my mind. I don't want your help. And I don't want you poking around in my business. Just leave me alone, okay?" I felt a surge of anger, but I knew I had to keep calm. I knew I had to keep trying to reason with her. But as I looked at her, I saw something in her eyes that made my heart skip a beat. I saw a glimmer of fear, a glimmer of desperation. And I knew that I had to push, to keep pushing, to see if I could get through to her. "Kiddo, what's going on?" I asked, my voice low and urgent. "What's really going on? You're not just in debt because of some mistake or some bad luck. There's something more to it, isn't there? Something you're not telling me." She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of panic in her eyes. But then, she shook her head again, and her expression hardened. "No, Dad," she said. "There's nothing to tell. I just made some bad decisions, okay? I'll get out of it on my own." But I knew she was lying. I knew she was hiding something. And I was determined to find out what it was. I took a step closer to her, my eyes locked on hers. "Kiddo, I know you're not telling me the truth," I said, my voice low and urgent. "I know there's something more to it. Something you're not telling me." She took a step back, her eyes flashing with anger. "I am telling you the truth, Dad," she said, her voice rising. "I just made some bad decisions, okay? I'll get out of it on my own." But I knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes, hear it in her voice. She was hiding something, and I was determined to find out what it was. I took another step closer to her, my eyes locked on hers. "Kiddo, I know you're scared," I said, my voice softening. "I know you're in over your head. But you can't keep running, can't keep hiding. You have to face the truth, and you have to face me." She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of fear in her eyes. But then, she shook her head, and her expression hardened. "I'm not scared, Dad," she said, her voice cold. "I'm just tired of you always trying to control me, always trying to tell me what to do. I'm an adult now, and I can take care of myself." I felt a surge of frustration, but I knew I had to keep calm. I knew I had to keep trying to get through to her. "Kiddo, I'm not trying to control you," I said, my voice softening. "I'm just trying to help you. I'm trying to protect you from yourself." She laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Protect me from myself," she repeated. "You mean like you protected me from Mom?" I felt a pang of guilt, a pang of regret. I knew I had failed her, failed to protect her from the pain and the hurt of her mother's addiction. But I was trying to make it right, trying to make up for lost time. "Kiddo, I know I wasn't there for you when you needed me," I said, my voice cracking with emotion. "But I'm here now, and I'm trying to make it right. I'm trying to help you, to protect you from the people who are taking advantage of you. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of uncertainty in her eyes. But then, she shook her head, and her expression hardened. You don't know what you're talking about, Dad, she said, her voice cold. You don't know what's going on in my life. Just leave me alone, okay? I felt a surge of frustration, a surge of anger. I knew I had to keep trying, had to keep pushing. But as I looked at her, I saw something in her eyes that made my heart skip a beat. I saw a glimmer of desperation, a glimmer of fear. And I knew that I had to keep going, had to keep pushing, no matter what. Kiddo, I'm not going to leave you alone, I said, my voice firm. I'm going to keep trying to help you, to protect you from yourself. And if that means going to the police, going to the debt collectors, then that's what I'll do. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of panic in her eyes. But then, she shook her head, and her expression hardened. You can't do that, Dad, she said, her voice cold. You can't just go to the police, go to the debt collectors. You don't know what you're dealing with. I took a step closer to her, my eyes locked on hers. Kiddo, I know exactly what I'm dealing with, I said, my voice firm. I know I'm dealing with someone who is taking advantage of you, someone who is using you for their own gain. And I'm going to stop them, no matter what it takes. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of fear in her eyes. But then, she shook her head, and her expression hardened. You don't know what you're talking about, Dad, she said, her voice cold. You don't know what's going on in my life. Just leave me alone, okay? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I knew I was getting nowhere with her, but I couldn't just give up. I had to keep trying, had to keep pushing. Kiddo, please, I said, my voice softening. Just talk to me. Tell me what's going on. What's going on in your life that's got you so scared? She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of uncertainty in her eyes. But then, she shook her head, and her expression hardened. There's nothing to talk about, Dad, she said, her voice cold. I'm fine. I just need some space, okay? I felt a surge of frustration, a surge of anger. I knew she was lying, knew she was hiding something. But I also knew that I couldn't just force her to talk, couldn't just force her to tell me the truth. I had to be patient, had to be gentle. I took a step back, trying to give her some space. Okay, kiddo, I said, my voice soft. I'll give you some space. But please, just know that I'm here for you. I'll always be here for you, no matter what. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of gratitude in her eyes. But then, she shook her head, and her expression hardened. Just leave me alone, Dad, she said, her voice cold. I felt a pang of sadness, a pang of regret. I knew I had to leave, knew I had to give her some space. But as I turned to walk away, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. I saw a piece of paper on the coffee table, a piece of paper with a name and a phone number on it. The name was Marcus, and the phone number was one I didn't recognize. I felt a surge of curiosity, a surge of concern. Who was Marcus, and why was my daughter in contact with him? I turned back to her, my eyes locked on hers. Kiddo, who's Marcus? I asked, my voice firm. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of panic in her eyes. But then, she shook her head, and her expression hardened. No one, Dad, she said, her voice cold. Just a friend. I didn't believe her, knew she was lying. But I also knew that I couldn't just push her, couldn't just force her to tell me the truth. I had to be patient, had to be gentle. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. Okay, kiddo, I said, my voice soft. "I'll let it go. But please, just know that I'm here for you. I'll always be here for you, no matter what." She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of gratitude in her eyes. But then, she shook her head, and her expression hardened. "Just leave me alone, Dad," she said, her voice cold. I felt a pang of sadness, a pang of regret. I knew I had to leave, knew I had to give her some space. But as I turned to walk away, I knew that I wouldn't give up. I would keep trying, keep pushing, until I found out the truth. I walked out of her apartment, feeling a mix of emotions. I was frustrated, angry, and worried all at once. I knew that my daughter was in trouble, but I didn't know what kind of trouble or how to help her. As I walked down the stairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. I felt like there was a piece of the puzzle that I hadn't seen yet, something that would help me understand what was going on with my daughter. I decided to do some digging, to see if I could find out more about Marcus and what he might have to do with my daughter's troubles. I started by asking around, talking to her friends and acquaintances, but no one seemed to know anything about Marcus. It was like he was a ghost, invisible and unknown. I decided to take a different approach, to see if I could find any information about Marcus online. I spent hours searching, scrolling through social media and searching for any mention of his name. And then, finally, I found something. A post on an obscure forum, mentioning Marcus and his involvement in some shady dealings. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a sense of excitement and fear. I knew that I was getting close to the truth, but I also knew that I was playing with fire. I decided to keep digging, to see if I could find out more about Marcus and his activities. I spent the rest of the day researching, poring over articles and posts, trying to piece together a picture of what was going on. And as the sun began to set, I realized that I had stumbled upon something big. Something that could put my daughter in grave danger. I felt a sense of panic, a sense of urgency. I knew that I had to act fast, to get to my daughter before it was too late. I grabbed my phone and dialed her number, my heart racing with anticipation. But as the phone rang, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was already too late. That my daughter was already in over her head, and that I might not be able to save her. The phone rang and rang, but she didn't answer. I felt a sense of dread, a sense of fear. I knew that something was wrong, and that I had to act fast. I decided to go back to her apartment, to see if I could find her and get her to safety. As I walked back to her building, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. That Marcus was waiting for me, and that my daughter was already gone. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I knew that I had to be brave, had to be strong. I had to save my daughter, no matter what. I walked into her apartment building, my heart racing with anticipation. I knew that I was taking a risk, but I also knew that I had to try. I had to save my daughter, no matter what it took. I walked into the apartment building, my eyes scanning the lobby for any sign of my daughter. The building was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the elevator. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I knew that I had to be careful, had to be strategic. I couldn't just barge into my daughter's apartment, not without knowing what I was walking into. I decided to take the stairs, to avoid the elevator. I didn't want to be trapped in a small space, not with Marcus possibly waiting for me. I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel my adrenaline pumping, my senses on high alert. I reached the third floor, where my daughter's apartment was located. I walked down the hall, my eyes scanning the doors for any sign of movement. I reached her apartment, and I took a deep breath. I slowly turned the handle, trying not to make a sound. The door creaked open, and I slipped inside. The apartment was dark, the only light coming from the moon outside. I fumbled for the light switch, trying to get my bearings. As the lights flickered on, I saw that the apartment was in disarray. Furniture was overturned, clothes were scattered everywhere. It looked like a tornado had hit the place. I felt a surge of fear, a sense of panic. I knew that something was wrong, that my daughter was in trouble. I called out for her, but there was no answer. I walked through the apartment, trying to find any sign of her. I checked the bedroom, the bathroom, but she was nowhere to be found. I felt a sense of desperation, a sense of hopelessness. I knew that I had to find her, had to save her. I walked back into the living room, trying to think of my next move. And that's when I saw it. A piece of paper on the coffee table, with a note scrawled on it. "Meet me at the old warehouse at midnight," it read. "Come alone." I felt a surge of fear, a sense of trepidation. I knew that I had to go to the warehouse, had to see what was going on. But I also knew that it was a trap, that Marcus was waiting for me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I knew that I had to be brave, had to be strong. I had to save my daughter, no matter what. I looked at the note again, trying to memorize the address. I knew that I had to be careful, had to be strategic. I couldn't just walk into the warehouse, not without knowing what I was walking into. I decided to do some reconnaissance, to see if I could gather any information about the warehouse. I left the apartment, trying to blend in with the shadows. I walked to the warehouse, my eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. The warehouse was abandoned, the windows boarded up. But I could sense that something was off, that something was waiting for me inside. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I knew that I had to be brave, had to be strong. I had to save my daughter, no matter what. I slowly approached the warehouse, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that I was taking a risk, but I also knew that I had to try. I had to save my daughter, no matter what it took. As I approached the warehouse, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that I was taking a risk, but I also knew that I had to try. I had to save my daughter, no matter what it took. I slowly opened the door, my eyes scanning the dimly lit interior. The warehouse was empty, except for a figure standing in the shadows. I could see the outline of a person, but I couldn't make out their features. I took a step forward, my eyes locked on the figure. "Where's my daughter?" I demanded, my voice firm. The figure slowly stepped forward, revealing a tall, menacing man with a scar on his cheek. I recognized him as Marcus, the man who had been terrorizing my daughter. "Ah, Mr. Johnson," he sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "I've been expecting you. You're just in time to witness the final act of our little play." I felt a surge of anger, but I kept my cool. I knew that I had to stay calm if I was going to save my daughter. "Where is she?" I demanded again, my eyes scanning the warehouse for any sign of her. Marcus chuckled, a cold, mirthless sound. "Oh, she's around here somewhere," he said, his eyes glinting with amusement. "But you'll have to find her yourself." I took a step forward, my fists clenched. "I'll never let you get away with this," I snarled, my voice low and deadly. Marcus laughed again, a cold, mocking sound. "Oh, I think I will," he said, his eyes flashing with triumph. "You see, Mr. Johnson, I've been playing a little game with your daughter. A game of cat and mouse. And I've won." I felt a surge of rage, a sense of fury that threatened to consume me. But I kept my cool, knowing that I had to stay calm if I was going to save my daughter. I took another step forward, my eyes locked on Marcus. "You're not going to win," I said, my voice firm. "I'll make sure of it." Marcus sneered, his face twisted with contempt. "You're just a foolish old man," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You don't stand a chance against me." I smiled, a cold, calculating smile. We'll see about that, I said, my voice low and deadly. And with that, I launched myself at Marcus, my fists flying. He was caught off guard, and he stumbled backward, his eyes wide with surprise. I followed him, my fists pounding into his face and chest. He tried to fight back, but I was too strong, too determined. I was going to save my daughter, no matter what it took. Finally, Marcus fell to the ground, his body battered and bruised. I stood over him, my chest heaving with exertion. "Where's my daughter?" I demanded, my voice firm. Marcus looked up at me, his eyes filled with hatred and malice. She's in the back room," he gasped, his voice barely audible. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. I burst into the back room, and I saw my daughter, tied up and gagged. I rushed to her side, my heart filled with relief and joy. "Daddy," she whispered, her eyes filled with tears. I hugged her tightly, my heart overflowing with love and gratitude. "I've got you, baby," I whispered, my voice shaking with emotion. "I'll never let you go again." As I held my daughter in my arms, I felt a sense of closure, a sense of justice. Marcus had gotten what was coming to him, and my daughter was safe. I knew that I had done the right thing, and that I would always be there to protect my daughter, no matter what. The police arrived soon after, and they took Marcus away, charging him with kidnapping and assault. My daughter and I went home, where we were greeted with open arms by our family and friends. We hugged and cried, our hearts filled with joy and gratitude. And as we sat down to dinner, my daughter turned to me and said, "Daddy, I'm so sorry. I was so scared." I hugged her tightly, my heart filled with love and forgiveness. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "I'm just glad you're safe." And as we ate dinner together, I knew that everything was going to be okay. My daughter was safe, and I had done the right thing. I had protected her, and I would always be there to do so.